She's going to make a presentation, guys, to say capture commission.
We want to see the car.
I'm done talking to you guys.
We want the history of the car.
I'm done.
Every car that
Those are live visuals coming to you from Nasrec, where the EFF's elective conference will be taking place this week. And just before the break, it looks like the EFF leader, Julius Malema, was talking to various media about the very issue that we were talking about. And we exited that conversation just as he was saying that nobody was actually banned. We didn't get the context of all of that. But certainly a story that we'll continue covering and finding out exactly what the situation is around the journalists that have not been offered accreditation for this particular conference. But staying with the EFF, the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa will oversee all the electoral processes of the party's second National People's Assembly. So how will these be done? Joining us today is the organization's executive chairman, Terry Tselane. Lovely to have you with us, Terry.
Thank you very much for having me here.
So tell us a bit about your role in the elections. Floyd Shivambu has said, in his view, this is perhaps one of the most organized elective conferences that he has been a part of.
Absolutely, and I've got to agree with them in a sense that they have decided to go for an independent institution that is renowned for its integrity and professionalism, which is IMSA. And they have said that we should run the elections with professionalism and integrity. And on the basis of that, I think they've subjected themselves to those democratic ethos and principles that govern democratic elections. And therefore, we are honored to be part of this process.
So, Terry, would you give us a bit of insight here? What exactly does it take to prepare for an elective conference of this nature? What goes into putting the bricks and mortar in place?
Well, the first thing that I've got to say is that we as IMSA have introduced what we call integrity wheel. So integrity wheel essentially covers all critical aspects that determine the integrity of the election. So we look at the framework of what makes the election to be free and fair, and we use that as a basis for organizing the elections. For instance, part of what we have as part of integrity wheel, it's the constitutional and legal framework. So when the political party comes to us and says they would like us to run the elections, we look firstly into their constitution, what is the legal framework, what are the guidelines saying, and we take that and put that into what we call the election rules. And it is then that we can actually be able to say, this is what it actually will entail. But of course, one of the critical aspects within the integrity wheel is the issue of the electoral staff and the quality of the electoral staff. But before we come to the electoral staff, we've got to establish how many delegates the party will be having. So that will determine the number of electoral staff that would actually appoint in order to be able to deal with it. And the third aspect is actually the issue of the logistics, the production of the ballot papers. Where do you produce the ballot papers? Now, in the case of the EFF, of course, as you know, that nominations actually happen on the floor. So you've got to be ready to be able to deal with the issues from that stage, from nomination side until voting, counting, as well as the declaration of the results. Another aspect is obviously the political environment. And then we're very, very happy that thus far, it appears to us that the conference is well organized, and the leadership of the EFF have said, deal with these issues with integrity, with professionalism, and then that's what we are renowned for as IMSA, and will therefore be running these elections with integrity, with integrity and professionalism.
And what are the possible challenges that the EFF might face throughout the course of this elective conference? Do you have an ability to almost, forecast and foresee what those challenges are so you can mitigate them before they actually even arise?
No, obviously before the elections, the election itself, we have a conversation with the leadership of the EFF and therefore identify all issues where we feel that perhaps there are weaknesses or shortcomings in terms of And we develop further regulations and principles in order to be able to deal with those issues. So as far as we are concerned, we have covered all the bases. We don't think there's going to be any problem. There is support for what we're going to be doing. And in fact, the fact that the EFF elected to have an independent institution to run the elections clearly demonstrate their commitment to ensuring that these elections are free and fair.
Is there a difference in the processes and how it would run between an elective conference and a normal election process?
Of course, there are major differences. The first one is that when you run the national elections, it is much more easier to develop what you call the election timetable based on the key milestones that we are supposed to achieve to arrive at an election. You've got sufficient time to develop the ballot paper and to put on all the security measures on the ballot paper. But in a case of a political party such as the one that we're having, you're having the nominations happening, and immediately after the nominations, we've got to produce the ballot paper. And then after producing the ballot paper, there's got to be voting. So all these things happen within a very short space of time. In national and provincial elections, we've got enough time to prepare for those. But for a political party such as the EFF, when we're having this kind of conference, you're working within very tight time frames.
And everything is manual?
Everything is going to be manual. We're hoping that at a later stage, at some stage, we'll be able to convince all the political parties to begin to move into electronic voting. We believe that it is the future. We believe that it makes things much more easier. But for now, we've got to work with what we have. And then, as I've said to you, we base our approach largely on the Constitution. What does the Constitution of the political party say? And we operate on the basis of it. It provides us with a framework, and it is the framework within which we operate.
And who would have access to the votes, to the ballots? And do you, as your organization, actually administer that entire process?
We administer that entire process. In fact, we've got the printing machine on site, so that immediately after the nominations, we can actually be able to print the ballot paper. So the ballot papers is not going to leave the premises where the elections are taking place, and then we will be watching each and every aspect. To us, the ballot paper is the most precious item in possession of an organization that is running the election, and therefore we will not want to have any problems related to that.
So you did mention earlier on that all the delegates have to register.
All the delegations have got to register, and we take that register basically as a voter's roll. So how this is going to be operated is that once they have adopted the credentials, we take that information, the credentials that is adopted by the conference, and we use that as a basis of our voters' roll. So the voters' roll is not going to be developed separate from what would have been adopted by the conference as credentials. So that's how we're going to be operating in relation to this.
And the number of ballots that you will then print will be in direct correlation to the number of those who have registered and are on the voters' roll?
No, we're going to increase them slightly. And the reason why we're going to increase them slightly is largely to be able to accommodate for any eventuality. Sometimes a person makes a mistake on the ballot before they deposit it, so you've got to give them another ballot. You still have to preserve that ballot that was not deposited, but you've got to make sure that you provide the person or a delegate that wants to vote to correct themselves and then to be able to cast a vote. So we'll increase them a little bit.
And in the eventuality of somebody contesting the outcome of an election, are you still involved then in that stage, and how do they go about airing their grievances?
We have put in place a mechanism to be able to deal with it. So the starting point is actually on the issues of credentials. The issue of credentials, we will refer that issue to the Credentials Committee as well as to the Steering Committee of the conference, because we're not dealing with the credentials. We have not been given the responsibility to make a determination in terms of who is a member in good standing. They've got their own processes. They've gone through those processes. They just have to give us the credentials as accepted by the conference. And because we have put in place a mechanism for the objections during that period, those objections related to credentials or to candidature of any individual would then be dealt with by the Credentials Committee or the Steering Committee. And all other aspects, during voting, there is also an opportunity to process. So,
so everything happens on that very same day?
Everything happens exactly as election is taking place.
All right, thank you so much, Terry. I'm sure it's going to be quite an eventful weekend ahead.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's Terry Tselane there, who is coordinating and managing the entire election process that is taking place this weekend. And he is from the election management bodies. Do stay with us. We continue with our coverage just after the break, and we are on standby for that presser that Julius Malema will be holding at NASREC. And these are live visuals of that presser, which looks like it's just started, but we'll be joining it in a moment. Do stay with us.
Have arrived. We're expecting 76 buses, and all of them have arrived safely. So all delegates are here in Gauteng province.